Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Legal Lunch Byte. I'm very excited to welcome Renaud Anjoran, who is partner and CEO of Sofast. He is currently in France, but spends most of his time in China, correct? So, Renaud, you and I have
Yes.
messaged a lot through the years. I know that you know my partner, Dan, and you have a wealth of knowledge about China and manufacturing. Dan speaks very highly of you, so I'm very excited that we can spend some time together today. Can you give us a little bit of background on you personally and professionally?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan, for inviting me here. Basically, about 20 years ago, finished my studies, moved over to Hong Kong, worked in a trading company, and 2 years after that, started my own little company called Sofast and doing quality assurance services and supply chain management services, and then went into new product development, mostly for electromechanical products. Let's say a lot of electronics, because being in Shenzhen, that's what was coming our way mostly. And I'm still over there now, living, let's say, in Hong Kong, but still pretty often on the Shenzhen and Dongguan side, to follow up on what's going on.
Excellent. That's great. So what years were you in Hong Kong originally? Because I was there from 2001 to 2003.
Oh, I was there end of '04. No, sorry, '05, '06, and early '07. Yeah,
Okay,
I
great.
was
So
after you.
we
Yeah, yeah.
just missed each other. And I was an idiot back then. I knew nothing about business or life, but I was having an experience in learning Cantonese and having a great time. So very, that's fun.
It's a nice
And
place.
and
It
so
was a
how
nice
is
place.
Hong Kong? I just had some friends over this past weekend, friends from Sichuan province who had spent a lot of time in Hong Kong. Now they relocated to Singapore. Just curious, what are you seeing there from an expat standpoint and a business, business community in Hong Kong?
Well, it's not very bright yet, but it's better than the 2.5 or 3 years of just getting locked behind a long quarantine and all the crazy things that were happening then. It's definitely reopened and so on, of course, as everybody knows. But a lot of things just relocated. A lot of headquarters just moved maybe to Singapore, Bangkok, and so on. A lot of even international competitions. I mean, even the Dragon Boat, uh, like World Cup, I don't know what they call it, was held in
Wow.
Bangkok. I mean, a lot of things just passed over Hong Kong. So is it still what were they calling it? Asia's world city, right? Is it still Asia's world city? Probably not. Um, is it still a livable place for expats who spend a lot of time in mainland China? Yes. Um, Especially if you don't have, kids that would go into the normal stream, because then, things are changing and becoming a little bit weird. That's what I hear. But apart from that, yeah, the economy is just a bit flat. A lot of
Mhm.
stores died and didn't really come back up, and it's a little bit sad.
Yeah, and all of this matches what I've been hearing as well. But it makes someone like you, who is there, in country, so valuable. So I mean, your perspective is so helpful to those of us who are sitting comfortably at home in a safer, freer environment, probably, and you're in the trenches dealing with a lot of those realities. So
Well,
so
keep your
so
head
let's
down and don't
what's
talk
that?
about certain things.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you certainly do have this perspective. It's invaluable to us. So let's talk. We've got about 10 minutes left. It always goes by quickly, but I'm really happy to get that background information from you. So 10 years ago, Beijing unveiled the Made in China 2025 set of policies. The Trump administration, going through the Trump administration forced Beijing to be a little less public about it. But what are you seeing on the effects of that industrial policy today?
I would say it's massive, especially as most of the work we do is in Guangdong, in like around Shenzhen, Dongguan, Huizhou, and let's say the backyard of Shenzhen, right?
Right.
And the thing is, Shenzhen has really emerged as the most modern, city. I mean, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing, of course, have also a lot of modern elements to them. But you have massive companies funding massive R&D operations. I'm thinking, obviously, there's still, Huawei is still going strong, actually. I remember at one point, maybe 5 years ago, it was like 9% maybe of the GDP of the whole Shenzhen city. And that's without counting what they had in Dongguan, massive operations over there, and all the subcontractors, of course. That's just a massive place in the economy. Now you also have BYD, which is obviously firing on all cylinders. I don't know if that's the right analogy, but anyway. The pedal to the floor, right? So they've been growing extremely fast. Right now they're as large as Tesla in the volume of EV sales worldwide, right? So and growing faster, it seems. So you have these massive companies, plus the other ones, the usual suspects, the ZTE and DJI and so on and so forth. Okay, so right now, let's say China's economy is not the most dynamic it's ever been, right? Got to be careful what I say, because saying something bad is a little bit frowned upon, down there. But it's not the most dynamic. But when you are in Shenzhen, you still see a lot of construction, projects. You still see a lot of new things happening. You still feel a dynamism that is not the dynamism that we're seeing there, let's say in 2016, 2017. Trump tariffs definitely sort of, put a lid on things, and we can still feel it. But, electric vehicles, batteries, and a number of other things that were part of Made in China 2025 are definitely there. We can really see that growing and taking a massive place in the local economy, let's say it this way. And it's just Shenzhen, Dongguan, but if you look at some other places, like Hefei, in Anhui, how many EV makers do they have over there? And it's become also a pretty dynamic city. I mean, just a couple of examples. So basically, if there are major industries targeted by that Made in China 2025 initiative in a certain area, that area is probably not doing bad these days, right? That's how big it is.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about foreign direct investment, but kind of as a segue, my China practice in 2023 slowed down quite a bit, and I didn't do any M&A deals related to China, not a lot of contract work either. And then Q1, especially Q1 of this year, it's like everyone came back to life. I did more in Q1, I think, than I did in all of 2023, and mostly around manufacturing and nothing in any sensitive areas, really. Battery technology, and of the not anything that would be definitely on the Made in China 2025 list, but not in the national security arena of those industries that would be on the Made in China 2025 list.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So let's turn to foreign direct investment then. We know that it's fallen dramatically compared to levels of 2018, 2019. What are you seeing in terms of foreign companies coming to China, kind of reinvesting in China? Are they acquiring assets, factories? Are they doing more contract related work? Are they moving? Are they always talking about moving supply chain out of China, or at least diversifying out of China? I'm curious what you're seeing there.
Right. So the FDI, if you take aside a few big German companies, it really went down pretty dramatically. So what we see is much less investment in manufacturing capacity than before. It's much more about sourcing, right? So a little bit more like arm's length, right? Let's use a good lawyer like you guys, and let's just buy from you, and let's cover on our downside. But especially for companies that are targeting the US market as the big market for their products. They don't want to raise their exposure to China. I think that's pretty clear. So that it's exactly as you were mentioning. They are looking at alternatives, but the problem is in certain industries, well, I would say good luck finding something else. It really depends what they're doing.
Right.
If they're just, I don't know, a simple product, a few plastic molded, plastic injection molded pieces, kitted together, packaged in a simple way, shipped, that could be done in a lot of places. But if you're looking at an electronic product with 50 or 100 lines on the bottom, and and using that specific kind of camera module or that specific display or that specific whatever camera, battery, or some of these very specific components that will come from China and will be a major part of the cost of the bill of material. You can move that to Vietnam and do final assembly. Then you need to work with lawyers to see if it's really substantial transformation, right? You can stamp like made in Vietnam, yes or no. But still, right, if something bad happens in China, you're still going to be hit, and most of the value, most of the money that you send to the Vietnamese operation is going to go to China anyway. And what is the Trump administration or any administration for that matter going to do if they really want to break that tight link with China? I mean, they're going to have to do something with all these cases where you have, I don't know, 90% of the value add go to China and whatever 3% go to Vietnam or Indonesia or India or some other place like that, right? So if they do that, they have to localize much better, right? I think that's really the difficulty that they have. Find the right place where they can get things going, but also localize as much as of the manufacturing as possible. And that is an uphill battle for SMEs. Very different from very big companies, but for SMEs, it's very difficult.
Yeah, and how successful have bigger electronic companies like Samsung and Apple been in relocating their manufacturing? Do you know as a percentage what it is? Have they moved 20, 30, 40, 50%? I'm just curious how that's been going. I mostly represent SMEs, so they're not on my radar that much.
Right. Yeah. Same with us. We don't work with these giants, but we look at them because where they go, right, everybody's looking at that. And also where they go, a lot of the component manufacturers are also going. So where they go now, or where they went 5 years ago, maybe in 5 or 10 years, there will be a space for SMEs to tap into that network, that supply chain that is brewing over there slowly, right? So Samsung went off a cliff in China in terms of sales, and they had their own factories there in Huizhou and so on. Let's say for mobile phones. Let's just talk about mobile phones. Okay. Now it's mostly in Vietnam, assembled in Vietnam, but it's very close to the China border. So that tells you something. A lot of the components are still coming from China, assembled there, and then I think they've been localizing again, right? But we're talking enormous volumes. And a big part of what they're doing. With Apple, the flagship product is the iPhone, right? And I think they say they are around 10 to 15% right now in India, in South India, right, between Bangalore and Chennai, with their usual contract manufacturers from Taiwan, Wistron and Foxconn and so on. And they're having a lot of issues ramping volumes up for the, let's say, the casing and the not very, very high tech kind of components that they still need to buy a lot of. So they want to buy locally, but then you want to ramp up at the volumes that they need and with the quality they need. And they've just been struggling very bad. But again, that means a lot of component manufacturers are being pushed nicely or not so nicely by these big giants to move there, right? So we're really observing how how that will impact the supply chain in the future, basically.
Right. It's very interesting. I like to tell my clients that there are certain Chinese companies that I would prefer to meet with and deal with in India, Vietnam, Mexico, than in China, right? They're in terms of the rule of law and contracts. And I'm with you. There are certain things. There's still 1.4 billion people in China, and there will be for a long time, even though they are on a terminal demographic decline. But it's I'm still studying Chinese every day, right? That's my dedication to the.
They're not going away.
Right. Exactly.
Agree.
Well, this has been lovely. Thank you. 15 minutes goes by quickly, but really appreciate the chance to catch up with you and meet for the first time in virtually, but in real time. And really look forward to catching up with you again soon in the future.
That was great. Thanks, Jonathan.